Welcome back. Let's move to the second talk of the day, which is correlated sparse recovery using compressive covariance estimation for the millimeter wave channel estimation problem by Dheeraj Prasanna. Dheeraj received the Bachelor Engineering degree in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Rashtriya Vidyalaya College of Engineering, RVCE, Bangalore in 2018. He recently defended his MTech research thesis for the Department of Electrical Communication Engineering at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, under the guidance of Professor Chandra R. Murthy. Currently, he is working as a modem systems engineer in Qualcomm's Bangalore Wireless R&D division. His research interests are in the area of compressed sensing, Bayesian learning, and wireless communications. Welcome, Dheeraj, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. So I'll be presenting a part of my MTech research thesis work under the guidance of Professor Chandra R. Murthy. So in this talk, I'll basically talk about this correlated sparse recovery problem motivated by the millimeter wave channel estimation problem. So we'll be using a technique called compressive covariance estimation to solve this problem. So I'll quickly introduce the motivation, why do we require this so-called correlated sparse recovery problem, and quickly introduce what exactly I mean by this term. Using this framework called covariance matching, that is a compressive covariance estimation, we'll look into an algorithm which we have presented for this correlated sparse recovery. Then finally, using the millimeter channel estimation problem, we will look at how this CoreSBL algorithm or this compressive estimation framework can actually be used to increase the recovery performance in the channel estimation problem. So the millimeter is considered to be a major, like a crucial technology in next gen wireless technologies, including the current 5G trends. The main advantage here is the large bandwidth available at this millimeter frequencies, but the signals at this frequency also experience high attenuation. By using MIMO, the large gains available can actually be used to counter this effect of attenuation. And in fact, both these go hand in hand. That is, because of the small antenna spacing at this smaller millimeter wavelength cases, we can actually pack more number of antennas, leading to easier implementation of MIMO systems. One key technique required to achieve these gains in MIMO is to obtain the channel state information, which is called the channel estimation problem. So we can look at different models for this millimeter wave, and which leads to different channel estimation problems. I'll be concentrating on this multi-user MIMO case, where you have k users and a single base station with n antennas aimed at serving these users, which employs a hybrid analog digital architecture. So I'll go through this architecture quickly in the next slide. So these architectures actually lead to some challenges in the channel estimation problem. So the hybrid analog digital architecture basically divides this beamforming into two domains, the analog and digital domains, thereby reducing the number of RF chains required, which leads to reduce in both cost and power. One important issue which occurs due to this is the traditional channel estimation techniques cannot be used because we now have an underdetermined system of measurements of the channel. This indeterminate system will basically, it's not, the recovery is not possible perfectly in this case. And to reduce the error in the recovery, we can use these techniques of structured signal recovery to obtain better estimation. So a lot of structures can be considered. We'll be concentrating on two important structures we can observe in the millimeter channel cases. The first is that in this case, the number of paths from the transmitter to the receiver is very small because of the high attenuation. This can be considered as a sparsity in the spatial domain. This is not a new structure, and there have been a lot of works which consider this application of different algorithms for estimating the channel by exploiting the sparsity structure. In addition to sparsity, we can also look at spatial correlation in the channels. There can be two different kinds of correlation which you can consider for spatial case. One is the effects in the antenna, mainly the mutual coupling effect, and there have been many works which have fit different models for the measured correlation. However, these assume that there is no correlation among the different path gains which are impinging at the receiver, and this leads to the other case of correlation where we can assume there are correlation among the path gains of the multipaths. So this can occur in different scenarios such as block scattering and environmental factors such as rain net invasion. One important point which is corresponding to both these is that spatial correlation is in generally unavoidable, and using this structure we can hope to try to get better recovery performance. In this work, I'll be concentrating on this correlated paths which can be formulated, which we will formulate it as a correlated sparse recovery problem. So to briefly go through the sparse recovery problem, this involves recovering a sparse vector from undetermined linear measurement. So by sparse vector, what we mean is that the number of non-zero entries in this vector is very small compared to the length of this vector, and we only have less number of measurements than the length of the signal to recover x. So this leads to an undetermined system, but the compressed sensing literature has shown that theoretically and also many algorithms have been proposed which can recover the sparse signal x with good performance recovery. One addition which we can consider, which has been considered in some literatures, is structure beyond sparsity. So we can look at two different ways we can look at these structures. One is the structure in the positions of these non-zero entries, which some popular models are joint sparsity and block sparsity, which I'll briefly go through in one of the future slides. And there are other models also which has been considered for this support of the sparse vector. Another way we can look at structure is the correlation in the entries themselves, the values of the entries. And basically it can be divided into two parts. One is intervector correlation, where we don't just have a single sparse vector, but we have multiple, and correlation exists among the same, like here, for example, this is the fourth entry. So between the fourth entry of this sparse vector and the next sparse vector. The other case, the intravector correlation, which we will consider here, is where the correlation exists among these non-zero entries of the same sparse vector. To formulate this intravector correlation, we'll consider this multiple measurement vector setup case, where we have multiple sparse vectors, but we assume that the support of each of these sparse vectors, the position of the non-zero entries, remains same across all these sparse vectors. And in uncorrelated signal case, the covariance of these sparse vectors can actually be shown to have a diagonal structures with small number of diagonal elements corresponding to the non-zero entries. But extending this to the case where these values can actually be correlated, the covariance matrix can be seen to be a principal submatrix which is positive definite in a positive semi-definite matrix. Again, the row locations of this matrix correspond to the non-zero entries. One important question which comes up is, why should we consider this intravector correlation? So we will look at 2 points to answer this. One is that existing algorithms which solve this multiple measurement setup case can actually perform poorly, especially when there is high correlation. Second is that by exploiting this correlation, we can in fact lead to better recovery performance. I'll explain both these points when I talk about both in the further slides. So going now into the correlated sparse recovery problem, to just summarize the formulation, we have these multiple sparse vectors, each with the same support, that is the row sparse model. And when we stack all these vectors into a matrix X, what you observe is that this matrix X has some non-zero rows, with most other rows being completely zero. So this is the joint sparsity setup model, which has been considered with algorithms such as simultaneous OMP, something called the multiple sparse Bayesian learning algorithm, and RDCMP, and many other algorithms actually have been proposed. So now to understand this structure, how to include this structure, we look at the generative model which generates these sparse signals. In the absence of correlation, most of these works force an IID prior onto the signal. To extract these structures, we would need non-IID models. Some of the ones in literature are this multiple measurement vector case with correlation. So without correlation, there is no relation among the entries in the different sparse vectors. But with temporal correlation, we can see that there is some kind of relation between the entries of the different sparse vectors. Similarly, the block sparse signal, which is the sparsity, the structure in the support, can also be extended to include intra-block correlation, as seen in this figure. However, this doesn't consider the presence of correlation among these entries across these blocks or at random positions. And that is what we are looking at in this intravector correlation problem case. To model this structure, we'll first look at the correlation matrix, which the ijth entry of which basically relates the correlation coefficient between xi and xj. And you can consider different models for u. Few popular examples are the uniform correlation, exponential correlation, and a generalization of this, which is the Toeplitz correlation model. In this talk, I'll be concentrating on the uniform correlation model, since this provides a simple framework, a single parameter framework to study the trade-offs involved in this problem. Now that we have this correlation matrix, we can obtain the statistical model by considering the covariance matrix, and the ijth entry of this covariance matrix using the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient definition is basically product of the ijth entry of the correlation matrix and square root of the individual variances, the actual variances. And by stacking this into a matrix, we can actually write this expression of given in this form, where this gamma star is basically a diagonal matrix which contains the variances of each of the entries in its diagonal. So one thing to note, what we saw before was that submatrix, principal definite submatrix in a semi-definite matrix. This model actually includes that. So to understand this, if I assume that ith element is 0, in which case the variance is also 0, and the ith row and the ith column of this covariance matrix basically will be 0, leading to the structure we saw before. So this will be the statistical model which will be considering to generate the correlated sparse signals. Now moving on to the recovery framework, we consider this covariance matching framework, where using the input, we obtain an estimate for the covariance of the measurements, which is then input into something called the covariance matching estimator, which is used to obtain an estimate for the covariance matrix of the signal itself. And this covariance matrix can then be used with plug-in MMSE estimators to obtain the final estimate for the signal. Coming to this covariance matching estimator part, which performs this compressive covariance estimation, that is, it uses smaller number of measurements to obtain the covariance of a larger length vector. To perform this, we look at the covariance matching criterion, which models the relation between the measurement covariance and the signal covariance as given in this equation 5. But since we don't know both sigma y and sigma x case, the covariance matching estimator basically uses the sample covariance estimate to minimize some distance between the covariance estimate and this model to obtain an estimate for this sigma x hat. By choosing different options for this distance d, we can obtain various algorithms. So for example, if you consider this Bregman log-dead divergence, it has shown that this estimator basically boils down to the MSBL estimator, and using this, there have been many other examples shown, such as this RDCMP, which stems from alpha RNE divergence. So for our algorithm, we'll not look at a specific D, but instead we'll look at developing a framework for this problem. So now looking at the first point which I mentioned, that how does the existing algorithms fare when correlation is present. So we assume a uniform correlation model with rho equal to 0.5. And what we observed was both this MSBL and RDCMP algorithm, the NMSE increased when correlation was observed. So our aim now would not only be to reduce this NMSE, but looking at the second point, we want to check whether exploiting this correlation can actually lead to better performance. That is, we move below this curve which has no correlation. So to do this, we have used this sparse Bayesian learning framework, which actually resulted in the MSBL algorithm as well, with small modifications required to exploit the correlation information. So to quickly summarize this framework, this can be divided into three parts. The first is the parameterized prior model, where prior is enforced onto the signal of interest. For this prior model, an ML estimation, type 2 ML estimation procedure is used to obtain the optimal value of the parameters theta. And the final prior estimate can then be used with the Bayes theorem to obtain a posterior distribution. And using the posterior distribution, we can obtain an estimate for XHAT by using the map estimate. Two important design considerations that led to this sparse Bayesian learning is, one is the prior model, which showed that by considering a parameterized Gaussian, the final estimate of the vector X can actually be sparse. The second is to use this ML estimation procedure, an EM algorithm was presented, which computes this hyperparameter bits in each iteration to converge to this optimal parameter theta star. To understand why this actually is a part of the covariance matching, since we are considering a Gaussian prior, and usually we consider a Gaussian noise model as well, the posterior distribution is also a Gaussian. And for the Gaussian case, the map estimate is equal to the MMSE estimate. And also, since this hyperparameters theta in the SBL framework is generally denotes covariance information, this whole part until this Bayes theorem acts like this covariance matching estimator case. And the map estimate basically will be the plug-in MMSE state. In fact, for the MSBL case, it was specifically shown that by choosing that Bregman log-rate divergence, we can show MSBL to be a covariance matching framework. So now that we saw this framework, we'll move into developing the algorithm for the correlated sparse recovery case. The first important novelty is to the choice of the prior. So this requires one to incorporate the prior knowledge we know about the signal, and also computational tractability in obtaining the posterior. We'll continue the Gaussian distribution assumption used in SBL, which not only incorporates the sparsity, but also leads to easier computation of the posterior. The difference, the novelty in our work is in the ability to include this correlation information. So the hyperparameter set theta we divide into two parts. One is the gamma vector, which denotes these unknown variances, and the matrix U, which denotes the correlation coefficient matrix. Now, using these two hyperparameters, this covariance matrix induced by the prior can actually be obtained again using the Pearson definition as given here. So this will be the prior model which we'll use to develop the algorithm. The next step would be to obtain this type 2 ML estimation procedure. So one important note is that we'll be using the precision matrix, which is the inverse of the covariance matrix, which simplifies the computation of the E and M steps. Now this leads to the hyperparameters changing from gammas to this C, which is basically 1 by square root of gamma S. So there's a 1-to-1 correspondence. And this ML estimation procedure, basically the type 2 ML estimation involves obtaining this optimal value C star by maximizing this L cost, which is basically log of the P of Y for that value of C. This problem is there's no closed form expression for this, and hence an alternative considered is the expectation maximization procedure, which basically involves iterating between two steps. The E step, which basically obtains a lower bound on this cost function L at each point C, or of each iteration, and the M step basically maximizes this lower bound to obtain a hyperparameter update. And the EM algorithm has been shown to converge by finding this maximum of the lower bound rather than the maximum of the true cost function itself. So we will be using the same step. I'll not go through the derivation and instead uh, point to the final algorithm what we have. So we are for the first algorithm, that is MMV core SBL, we'll assume that the correlation matrix is in fact known, and the only unknown parameters there are the variances. So for in this case, the algorithm basically boils down to the E step, which is given in this blue, which involves computing the posterior distribution, which has a precision matrix give and mean given here. Now using these to an estimate for the covariance of the signal can actually be obtained in this form. And when we go to the M step, what we observed was the M step leads to a fixed point iteration. And we have shown in our work that a single iteration of this fixed point, in fact, leads to convergence of the EM algorithm. So we have a simple one step expression for the hyperparameter update. Since this E step, in fact, was the posterior distribution, the final estimate, the map estimate, in fact, will be this mean at convergence. So when this while loop ends, we can use the mean value as a final estimate for the signal. So here, since we assume U to be known, when U is unknown, which happens in practice, one thing can be considered is to include this U as a hyperparameter, but the second order derivatives which are required lead to some complications, and as we present a simpler pragmatic approach to learn this correlation. So the E step and M step remain the same. However, as I told before, this Rx hat which was an estimate for the covariance matrix, can actually be used basically projected onto the space of correlation matrices to obtain an estimate for U. Note that in the SBL framework, this gamma cap, the diag of Rx hat itself was a hyperparameter update. But in our case, we use this diagonal elements to project this Rx hat into the correlation matrix case. The other parts of the algorithm remain the same. So one again, going back to the same point where I talked about whether this algorithm does come under the covariance matching framework, we saw that the final output was actually written in this form. But by using some properties of matrices, we can write an alternative expression for the same, which involves multiplying this matrix M with Y, which can actually be written in this plugin LMMSE estimate form. So the plugin LMMSE estimate is a sub part of the plugin MMSE estimates, and hence this core SBL output is in fact of that form with this covariance matrix estimate, that is sigma x hat, of the form gamma half U gamma half, where this gamma half core SBL is basically the values of the hyperparameters at convergence. So now that we see in this LMMSE estimation form, one important case comes to why should we use the MMV problem. That is, there have been many works which have shown that this covariance estimation is better if we average over multiple signal instantiations which have the same covariance matrix. So by using the MMV problem, we'll obtain better estimate for the covariance sigma x hat, which will lead to better estimate in the signal as well. So this is the core SBL framework which was developed for the correlated sparse recovery problem. Now to understand the significance of this algorithm, we look back to the motivation case, that is a millimeter channel estimation problem. So the system model is what we saw before. So we'll consider the uplink case for channel estimation problem. This hybrid analog digital architecture is as we saw initially as well. So in the uplink, each user sends a independent data xi, and this received signal at the base station is basically combined using both analog and digital combiner. The channel estimation problem involves basically estimating these channels H1 to Hk by pilot transmissions from the user. So we use this combined signal Y for pilot transmissions, which are known at the base station, to obtain a final estimate for these channels. Now to mathematically represent the two structures we had looked at initially, sparsity and correlation, we'll consider the virtual channel model, which basically involves gridding the range of angle of arrivals using some D grid points. And the error response vectors for these are stacked to form this matrix A, in which case the channel actually can be approximated as A times G, where this G is basically the complex baseband path gain vector. And since we saw that there will be only a small number of paths, in this case we consider to be L paths, the G vector is basically an L sparse vector, since this D is usually chosen to be very much larger when compared to L. Next, to looking at the statistical model, we'll use consider one assumption which is common across this literature, that is block fading, where since the channel changes slowly, the channel can actually be assumed to be constant over some tau c channel uses. And across these blocks, we assume that they are independently distributed. So now, to include the correlation information, we look at the covariance matrix of this G vector, which is the sparse representation of the H. So the covariance matrix Rg, when the path gains are correlated, is of the same form which we looked at the correlated sparse recovery problem, that is a submatrix in a large matrix. We also assume that we know that this correlation model is given by this correlation matrix U. So now that we have this channel model, we now move on to the pilot transmission problem itself, where each user sends a unique k-length pilot. So we need orthogonality property. So we need at least a k-length pilots. And by using this property of the orthogonal pilots, the received digital front-end signal, which has a combination of all the channels, can actually be converted into measurements for each channel independently by multiplying the pilot, post-multiplying the pilot. So here note that now we in the YK measurement we have the effect of only the kth user's channel, and the noise is also independent across users, and hence we can actually drop this subscript k. So now the goal of channel estimation would be to estimate this H, which is of interest for us, as A times G from this measurement model y is equal to 5G plus N. We can do this for each of the user independently. Note that this problem is very similar to what we saw in the correlated sparse recovery problem, only that here this assumption of single measurement vector case comes up. So for the channel estimation problem, we can in fact use the same the plugin LMMC estimator what we discussed before, and this plugin LMMC estimator, we can see different algorithms for this depending on this estimate for this covariance matrix RHAT. We'll look at 5 important algorithms which we'll be considering in this talk. The first is this Gini-aided LMMSE, where this covariance matrix is exactly known. So this will be an optimal algorithm for in our case, which will be the benchmark. Another Gini algorithm which you can consider this element-wise LMMSE, which knows this covariance information, the variance information, but it assumes that there is no correlation. So by forcing U equal to I, we get RHAT to be A gamma A Hermitian. This is also an Gini estimate, which basically doesn't exploit the correlation information. As we saw before, we can represent the CoRSBL also in this plugin LMMC form, and similarly the MSBL can also be written the same by forcing this U equal to I with the parameters obtained from the MSBL algorithm. One more simple estimate which you can consider is this imperfect channel covariance information, where the covariance is estimated from the measurements using a simple sample covariance estimate. So we have considered a single framework for the channel estimation problem. But note that so far we have only considered the single measurement vector case. As I discussed before, the multiple measurement vector case is in fact advantageous to obtain better recovery performance. And to implement such an MMV setup, we can use the property of millimeter channels, that is, this channel statistics actually vary slower when compared to the channel themselves. So this statistics such as the covariance or the angle of arrivals vary slower and can be assumed to be constant over some tau-s covariance blocks. So large number of covariance blocks. And pilot transmissions from each of these or some subset of T covariance blocks can actually be used in the MMV setup, since we now have independent instantiations of channels with the same covariance matrix. The major disadvantage in this setup is latency. That is, if we need to estimate the data in the first covariance blocks, we would need to wait for the whole of these T covariance blocks to arrive at the receiver. This is not feasible in practice, and hence we look at an online estimation case for the same core SBL algorithm, where the core SBL is used in batches of delta, which is very small when compared to T covariance blocks. But by using the covariance estimates from the previous covariance blocks, we can have a running sum of the covariance, which we do because with the better covariance estimate, we hope that the effect of this online estimation is felt only at the initial covariance block, and the performance is actually good in later covariance blocks. So this will be the online estimation problem for the millimeter channel estimation case. So this ends the description of the algorithm, that is implementing this core SBL algorithm for this millimeter case. To understand why this is useful, I'll present some few results. Further results can actually be obtained from my paper or my thesis. So I'll go through some important results which show the advantage of these algorithms. So first we'll look at how SNR affects the performance. So we'll consider the uniform correlation model, and the system parameters are fixed as given here. So we fix the number of antennas, the grid points, number of users and RF chains, the paths, and also the number of covariance blocks. So what we observe here is that for SNR less than 0 dB, there is not much significant advantage of exploiting this correlation, and in fact we have a very bad recovery performance, that is a 0 dB performance. But as we move from as for SNR greater than 0 dB, we see that the core SBL, the performance NMSE decreases very quickly and follows very closely to this Gini aided estimator at high SNRs. In the core MSBL case also, we see that there is reduction in NMSE with SNR, but the reduction is smaller, and core SBL basically outperforms MSBL for SNR greater than 0 dB. For further experiments, we can in fact look at any of these SNRs, but we'll be concentrating on this SNR equal to 10 dB in the further simulations. So next effect, what we observed was in this a number of multipaths. So the number of multipaths is basically acts as a function of this sparsity level. It acts as a sparsity level of the signal. And what we observed here was that when we have very small number of multipaths, so we had this RF chains to be 16, and if we have this number of multipaths to be very small, we don't see advantage in exploiting the correlation. The MSBL performs similar to core SBL. But as the number of multipaths increases, we see that the performance of MSBL degrades very quickly, whereas the core SBL in fact follows very closely to this Gini aided LMMSE estimate. And this can be seen even at high sparsity levels, which lead to measurement constrained regions. So we can look at various other parameters of interest here, like the length T or the number of antennas, and we do have some results in our and even the correlation coefficient. We do have some results in our work, but I'll skip those and move to the online estimation problem. So note that remember that we talked about reducing the latency but taking a hit in the initial covariance blocks. So we wanted to understand what percentage of these covariance blocks in fact has this worse performance compared to what we require. So to understand this, we plot the percentage of covariance blocks which has an NMSE worse than the value in the x-axis. So if we consider this minus 4 dB NMSE, all these points for each of these curve basically implies that the number of percentage of covariance blocks which has NMSE worse than minus 4 dB, that is to the right, is the y-axis value. So looking at the MMV setup, that is this black curve, delta equal to 512, we see that for the minus 4 dB, we see that only like 0.01% of the covariance blocks are affected. By reducing the latency, even dividing the latency by 4, we see that not much covariance blocks are affected. And even at this very small latencies of delta equal to 32, we observe that only about 0.1% of the covariance blocks are in fact affected. So we are reducing the latency and taking hit only in a very small number of covariance blocks where the performance will be lower. So if you so all these results what we discussed so far was with respect to the normalized mean square error. But when we look at a communication problem, another important another important metric is the spectral efficiency. So to obtain better spectral efficiency, the combiner matrix we discussed, that F and W both can actually be obtained by using the channel estimates. So I'll not go through how we can obtain that in this talk, but as we have considered a simple model which doesn't require further optimization, and we look at the sum rate, that is sum of the spectral efficiency across all users as a function of number of antennas for the different algorithms. So what we observe here is that the CORSBL not only outperforms MSBL, that is we see around 50% increase in the sum rate, but it also performs very close to the LMMSC, Genie-aid LMMSC estimator in the hybrid analog digital architecture case. But it also performs very close to the channel estimates obtained from LMMSC, but we have a fully digital, that is we have more number of RF chains equal to the number of antennas. So the CORSBL in fact has spectral efficiency performance very similar to the fully digital setup. Yeah, so these are the some important results that we observed, which shows this advantage of the exploiting this covariance. To summarize what we saw here, so we noticed first that there was a degradation in performance of this MSBL algorithm when the signal had high correlation, and also especially in these highly measurement constrained scenarios. We presented this CORSBL algorithm as a means to solve this correlated sparse recovery problem to obtain better estimates. And in the millimeter channel estimation problem, we saw the role that exploiting both spatial correlation and sparsity involves, that is the reduction in NMSC for a wide range of scenarios. Also note that we did have the curves, so I think I forgot to mention this. So in both these curves, we had this CORSBL learn as well, that is where we didn't know the correlation matrix as well. And here actually what we observed was that there is performance gains which is very close to the CORSBL, where the correlation matrix is in fact known. So this is basically performance gains when there is imperfect correlation information in the signal. So what we had was a basic setup to show the advantage of exploiting the correlation, and some interesting extensions can be considered. So the first is, since we consider only the intra-vector correlation, we can in fact look at the inter-vector correlation as well. So many of these channels, while they have very similarity across these covariance blocks, there are some correlations among them as well which can be exploited. This is in fact will be very useful in the online estimation case, where we can hopefully recover the channels even at the initial covariance blocks better by exploiting this correlation. Second extension we can consider, which is useful in practice, is the multi-cell system, where we not just have one base station but multiple base stations. And in this case, we see this effect of pilot contamination, and exploiting this correlation can actually be advantageous in solving this problem. Also, we considered only this CORSBL for this millimeter channel estimation problem in this case, but in many other applications such as imaging, where currently they assume the absence of correlation. In fact, by exploiting any correlation present in that, we can actually use CORSBL in those cases. So this brings an end to my talk. The results, so I basically talked about some important, I've gone over the overview of the result, and further information can be obtained from the publications, and also you can obtain get the thesis from the ETD IISc website as well. So I've added my email here, and I'm open to any questions that I can answer.
Thank you, Dheeraj, for the talk. We are open to questions. Are there any questions? Please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Okay, if there are no questions, Dheeraj, can you stop sharing?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Okay, so thank you, Dheeraj. Please accept this virtual memento from IEEE IC Communication and Signal Processing Society chapters.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors.